All right, ladies and gentlemen, it does appear that I have been prompted by good old Tectone himself to react to this incredible list on what's best, what's maybe worst across all of the big gacha games in the industry. And so he's just up front. He's going to break it down for all of us. He's going to be comparing these gachas against each other. Zenless Zone Zero versus Wuthering Waves versus Genshin Impact versus HSR. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. It's not an opinion, it's fact. And feel free to attempt to disagree down below, but just know that you're wrong. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna dig into this take. I'm gonna dig into every single little thing that we see on here and try to prove this big, bald fucker wrong. All jokes aside, I'm excited to see this list. Let's get right on into it. Best exploration, Wuthering Waves. I'm gonna be honest. I don't really see that much wrong with this take at all. Obviously, you might think that I am the biggest woo-wah shill in the industry, but let's be honest here. Objectively, we can think of a lot of ways to quantify this as best, right? No exploration locked behind the paywall. Every single QOL in the game is easily accessible, and the things that make the exploration have a higher quality of life, they're actually good. Flight's good. Running up walls is good. Having the little speed ups on the ground in the overworld, that's good. Having all the echo skills available right off the rip to jump around from spot to spot, that's good. Even 1.0, where it lacks a lot of these features, is still better. Because, let's think about it this way, guys. Actually going out, claiming all of these explorables, getting all of the astrite, getting all of the chests, it doesn't feel painful to do. It feels like it makes a lot of sense, and you don't feel like you're actively struggling against the game or struggling against the game's overworld mechanics like you do in Genshin Impact to actually get stuff done. And there's not really much competition in the space over here. This is mainly a Woo-Wah versus Genshin take right off the rip, and I'm gonna be honest, even the Hoyo shills can say that Wuthering Waves is better. So right off the bat, he's 1 for 1. Best gacha experience. Yeah, objectively, the weapon banner is guaranteed. You can get dupes from the shop in Wuthering Waves, and the pity is lower across all the banners, and the rates are higher too. It is objectively better in every single way compared to these three games. There's really no arguing it. The number, yeah, every single quantifiable measure is better. The best combat. This is where I think it could get a little bit more subjective in the takes that we're getting over here. But let's be honest. There's a level of seamlessness in how you're rotating from team member to team member. You get to decide when you want to use certain things. You get to decide how your rotations are done. You have so many different ways to optimize your gameplay. You can do things like quick swap outside of quick swap teams to speed up your rotations, even in things like hyper carry. There's a very high skill ceiling that a lot of players, right, haven't even explored yet. But that option is always there in case they want to further optimize the way that they're playing. I think that this is something, right, that can maybe use a deeper dive from Techie. This is something that could use a bit more of like breakdown, especially when we're going to be comparing it against 3 other games in the genre. And my opinion is that it has the best combat. And I'm going to be honest, I think that he needs a little bit more of an explanation. He needs a little bit more of a rundown, a breakdown of what makes it the best here, if we're going to be going in that this isn't an opinion and that it is a fact. I do think there are a lot of things that make it really good. And in my opinion, it makes it the best. But you know, how are we going to prove this with just a definitive statement like this? So I think I'm a little bit iffy on this one. Best character design, Zenless Zone Zero. I think this is a fair take. And the reason why I think this is a fair take is for a couple of reasons. The level of variety, the sort of like character thematics, the really big differentiation from faction to faction, I do think that that's what makes Zenless Zone Zero pretty good in the character design category. I can clearly see that each one has a very unique moveset. They all have different animations. There is a lot of effort. There is a lot of effort put into the design of each of ZZZ's characters. And I do think from that angle, that point of view, all the animations, the work that they've done in the UI, it is great. I think that it's a strong point. I think that it is a very big strong point about the game. And you can make the argument in a similar vein, right, for Wuthering Waves. But it is also fair to say that some of the design elements for Wuthering Waves characters can get a little bit samey, especially in the 1.0 roster. I think they've done a lot of great jobs, in differentiating how the characters look in 2.0, and hopefully they'll continue that beyond. But when we look at the 1.0 roster of Wuthering Waves and they compare compare it to the 1.0 roster of Zenless Zone Zero, I do think ZZZ actually does take the cake here, pun intended. And when we think about Genshin Impact, yeah, I'm gonna be honest, all of the characters have like the same exact skeletons. They're like a little bit, you know, Genshin's a little bit lacking. They do have some standouts. Genshin does have some absolute standouts on the roster, but they're few and far between. While I do feel like everything in ZZZ does feel fresh, does feel new, and especially when it comes to the 4-star units, I think it's safe to say that in ZZZ, sometimes I can't tell when a unit is actually 4 or 5 stars. And you could say that's a bad thing. I actually view that as a plus, because in Wuthering Waves and Genshin Impact, you can tell when a character really isn't a 5-star unit. And in ZZZ, you can't tell when somebody's a 4-star unit or when somebody's a 5-star unit. And so from that perspective, I think everybody looks great. And from that objective point of view, I do think that, you know, it makes sense here. Best world design, Wuthering Waves. This is an interesting one. And I do think that a lot of the new additions that we got into 2.0 are doing the heavy lifting over here. It is fair to say that Renacita and all of its new aspects, just the huge variety, the day to night shift, I think that's what brings it up to the top when it comes to this list and when it comes to the comparison of all the other games. When you look at Renacita in the day and then you look at Renacita at night, all those different regions, it's literally like night and day. While in other games, it's kind of just darker. And that's not even getting into how well designed all of the different regions actually are. And from my perspective, right, it does make sense. However, we also have to factor in that the 1.0 world design wasn't really a big cup of tea for a lot of players, especially the darker areas. But we do have to factor in, right, that those darker areas are getting offset with areas like the Violet Banyan. 1.0 actually has some really, really beautiful areas and some really great vistas for people to explore. And there's also stuff like the Black Shores, which gave an incredible new vibe. Mount Firmament, which honestly, I feel like a lot of people just forgot about Mount Firmament. Mount Firmament looks awesome. And it's like, when you think about all of that variety that you're getting in game, all of the variety that you get with every new region that's been released, let's be fair here, I do think it does stand out on top. When you think about regions in Genshin Impact, the most differentiated one is Sumeru. Everywhere else looks kind of like the samey. And Sumeru is only differentiated by the fact that half of the region has nothing in it. It's differentiated by the fact that Sumeru, half of it, there's nothing there because it's a fucking desert. And that kind of sucks. Best combat animations, Zenless Zone Zero. I think if you're putting Wuthering Waves as a close second, this is somewhat fair. It is quite clear that the animators on the ZZZ team put a lot of effort into the models. They put a lot of effort into the rigging. And they're clearly trying to target and appeal to a certain type of audience. And it is fair to say that there's a lot of work put into every single character that they're releasing. And while Wuthering Waves, in my opinion, is a very close second if we're going by these rankings, it doesn't have like the same level of... It's simply due to like the fact that every character in ZZZ has like its own unique skeleton, and they do have their own unique rigging, and that lets every single character look wildly different in combat. I don't think there's a single ZZZ character that looks like another ZZZ character. While you can make the argument, right, that in Wuthering Waves, the fact that characters share the same model or the same model type, that can lead to a little bit of sameness from that perspective. That, and there are some plunge attacks, right, that look exactly the same across 4-star characters, right? Like Sanhua and Yang Yang have basically the exact same plunge attack. And obviously in Genshin, that problem gets even worse, where every Claymore user does the exact same thing. And every polearm user does that stupid little 360 twirl when they do their heavy attack. Best music, Honkai Star Rail. Honkai Star Rail does have some pretty good music. It does. But Genshin's music is also pretty good. ZZZ is depending on how much you like dubstep. And Renacita in 2.0 has a lot of good tracks on its own. So good, in fact, that you even had the greatest music fetishist in the industry, Marco Meatball, glazing the shit out of 2.0 soundtrack. But from that same perspective, you can say that 1.0's music is so bad or so unappealing that it drags it down as a whole. I do think that this one is a little bit too subjective, but if I'm thinking about it in terms of memory, what comes to mind when I'm thinking about gacha game tracks? You have things like Wildfire. You have things like the Dan Hung song, where it's like, no, 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 no. Right, like that one. Those are pretty good tracks. And when I think about the character trailers too, like Sparkle's character demo, Blade's character demo, yeah, when I factor in all of those things, pretty solid. Pretty solid. Best story. Genshin Impact. Well, ladies and gentlemen. Well, ladies and gentlemen. If we're thinking about it from the overarching theme, of what they've been able to accomplish since the very start of the game, I think that Genshin Impact story has a lot of layers. Genshin Impact story has a lot of layers that make it palatable to a wide audience. It has enough simplistic elements where it's easy for people to pick up, and then they have like those really long-term implications that kind of keep you coming back for more if you're well invested. But my gosh, the storytelling in it is just so dog shit that it makes it hard to stay on for the entire ride. It does make it hard to stay on for the entire ride. And I do think that because it's been the game with the longest runtime, and it's had the most opportunities to actually flesh out all of these different plot points, I could see why it's at the top. It could be story simply based off of the fact that it has had the most opportunities for people to actually listen to it. It has the benefit of 4 years. And if that's the reasoning that Techie used over here, maybe. Zenless Zone Zero story is not that bad either, but it needs more time to actually flesh out this stuff, right? Like ZZZ right now feels like it's on a massive fucking cliffhanger where you don't actually know where a lot of stuff is. You've been given like hints and clues about what is going on, but ZZZ hasn't had enough time to cook. And then HSR is just like, what the fuck are we even doing? I'm actually going to be honest. HSR, it feels like it has no clue what it's doing. I think worst story should be on here. I think HSR's story is literally the worst thing. Now that we've had Amphorius, HSR's story literally just seems like we're just going to random fucking places for fun. That's what it feels like. You're just going to random fucking places for no reason. For literally no reason. I think the actual reason to go to Amphorius was, we need more fuel. What? To trailblaze and get more fuel, we just go to random fucking places that we haven't been to before. That to me is like weak as shit. It is weak as shit, and I'm glad that it's not ranked first here. Wuthering Waves is, I think, really similar to ZZZ, and it needs more time to cook. It needs more time to flesh out all these different regions. It needs more time to like break into some of the dynamics. And obviously, right, a lot of the 1.0 story was about Rover and what they've done. Not too much beyond that. So more time to cook for the other two games. HSR is dog shit. So I think automatically Genshin kind of has to be on top. I think Genshin has to be on top because two other games need more time to cook and HSR fucking sucks. I think this is fair, actually. Now that I think about it, after that breakdown, I think this is fair. I think this is really fair. Best storytelling, Zenless Zone Zero. I'm a little bit iffy on this one. I think Wuthering Waves actually is better. I've noticed, I basically speedran the entire story from Jane Doe all the way to the end of 1.5 with Astra Yao. And what I've noticed is that while the dialogues are like good and the interactions are good, they kind of do the same pose thing in ZZZ. It's just, instead of the same pose being the same for every character type, it's like the same pose for every character. Where people have like the this one, like the this one, and then like, you know, like this one. And then they'll kind of alternate between 3 or 4 poses for like every single character in those actual dialogues. And while it is more expressive, the thing about Wuwa that really stands out to me is that they have a lot of very unique poses, right? That they reuse maybe like once a patch, or they don't reuse it at all. And they do a lot more like customized rigging. And let's be honest, guys, in Wuthering Waves, they had the perfect blend, especially in 2.0. They had the perfect blend of fighting and chatting in between. I think the only part about 2.0 that felt a little bit off was the whole like stuff with the Fool's Troop, where I got to see Brant doing his fucking pose way too many times. But then you had like the dynamic camera angles helping to make it seem a little bit more different. While, you know, in ZZZ, you don't really have the dynamic camera angles, but you do have like the cut-ins, you know, like the cut-ins where people are like being swapped out and swapped in. I could see the argument between the two, but I do think it is very clearly, evidently, it's going to be Wuwa versus versus ZZZ over here, and whichever one's in the top spot, the other one is very, very close behind. Best developer team, Wuwa. There's no real argument here. If you don't think this, you actually have Stockholm Syndrome from Genshin Impact or just Hoyo in general. ZZZ has absurd power creep, let's be honest here. Miyabi is just like, okay, Ellen owners, go fuck yourself. HSR is just like, Amphorius, go fuck yourself. Genshin is just like, yeah, we're not doing shit until Wuwa releases for quality of life. Yeah, unless a competitor comes in and is actually good, you can go fuck yourself. Best voice acting, Zenless Zone Zero. I can buy that. ZZZ has some really good VAs. They do. They do. And while Wuwa does have some particular standouts, like Jennifer English as Carlotta, I don't think one character can solo an entire cast where pretty much everybody in ZZZ sounds pretty good. While in Wuthering Waves, right, we do have some lowlights. We do have some lowlights in the reel. And I think Genshin and HSR are just simply disqualified by the fact that they haven't had voice acting in like a year. And yeah, EN can just go fuck themselves. Best game for children, Genshin Impact. Honestly, I think HSR might take this cake as well. Just build your kid a Super Break team, and then they'll be able to do all the content in the game. Just give them a Super Break team, and then tell them to press the auto button. They'll clear MOC, they'll clear Pure Fiction, they'll clear Apocalyptic Shadow. And yeah, it's literally a one-button game. I do think HSR should be on top here. Just you know, do a little bit of homework for your kid. You build them a Super Break team, and then they won't have to do anything else. They can just, it could just be like colorful lights. It can just be colorful lights for them. Fruit Ninja is literally harder to play than HSR. Best game for adults, Wuthering Waves. Yeah, I can see that. There's enough complexity in the combat. There's enough like optimizations you can make. You can decide to be as sweaty as you want, but you can also be a responsible working adult and just play a chill hypercarry team and then just clear all the content too. It's got enough depth for you to explore when you do want to like really dig into it, but it also has like the levers in it that make it palatable for somebody that isn't trying to spend, you know, months in it. Best Endgame, Zenless Zone Zero. I think ZZZ might be up here just because of quality. Or not because of quality, because of quantity. Because they have a fuck ton of stages that you can do. They do have a lot of stages that you can do. But I do feel like the problem with ZZZ's endgame, at least in my opinion, is that their endgame in the Endless Tower is literally just the enemies one-shotting you. Is that not it? In the Endless Tower, the difficulty is literally just the enemies one-shotting you. And Wuwa has that in holograms, 1000%, but you don't even get one-shot in holograms. There are like 3 attacks in hologram 6 that one-shot you. The holograms are not a one-shot, guys. You'll survive like a hit or two. There are a couple of attacks that one-shot you, but those are kind of few and far between. Most hologram bosses, you can tank a hit or two, and you'll be okay. But I would say in terms of variety, they got Shiyu defense, they have Deadly Assault, and then the tower. I think that they have like enough differentiated scoring that the modes do feel different, but I think the biggest problem with ZZZ's endgame, at least for me, is that ZZZ's endgame does feel like not really a skill check. The tower feels like a skill check, but Deadly Assault and Shiyu defense feel like roster checks. They feel like roster checks. And I feel like at endgame, where it's just like, hey, you don't have XYZ element, or you don't have XYZ role on your team, go fuck yourself. It feels a little bit rough. Deadly Assault and Shiyu literally have like these bosses where it's like, oh, well, guess what? If you don't have Anomaly, you literally can't trigger this bonus, or you can't get these points. And it's just, well, cool, but it feels like shit if you don't have what you need to enter the game mode. I don't like that in ZZZ, you need to have the characters or else you cannot get the full rewards from the end game. I don't like that. While in Wuthering Waves, you can have the characters, it's easier, but if you don't have them, you can still get everything in the end game. And I feel like ZZZ, you just simply can't do that. And so this is why I think Techie's ranking is based off of quantity and not quality. I think the quality of Wuwa's endgame is much higher. It simply doesn't have as much as ZZZ. But I think from a quality perspective, I like Wuthering Waves a lot more. And we'll just have to see our Whimpering Wastes improve on it. Hopefully it'll be good. But this game being this much of a roster check, I don't really like it. Most improved, Wuthering Waves. I don't think anyone can really argue against this. The 1.0 launch had some really bad elements to it. But now 2.0 is widely considered by many people the best patch in the history of gacha gaming. That's literally the definition of most improved. Least improved, Honkai Star Rail. Yeah, 3.0 is just one of the most disappointing pieces of flaming trash that I think any player has ever experienced. People are quitting the game massively. People can't stop shit-talking the game. It's so fucking bad, it's ridiculous. characters. Best community, Zenless Zone Zero. I've had Techie's explanation of this. The reason why he put ZZZ at the top is because there's so few people talking about the game that it never gets into any trouble. It's just everybody's too busy gooning. They never actually talk about the game. And I think that's fair to say. Nobody ever really talks about it. And so when gacha game communities are deemed bad based off the amount of shit that they're talking, and ZZZ, well, nobody talks, I think by that definition, yeah, it is going to be the best. Best events, Zenless Zone Zero. I think the ZZZ events kind of take too long, in my opinion, but that's more of a me problem, where I literally do think that they take too much time to get to the rewards. But if you actually enjoy playing through and you enjoy the characters, which I know many people do in this sort of environment, then I do think that the events are actually quite nice. However, if I'm somebody that's focused on resources, if I'm somebody that's focused on, like, you know, getting in, getting out, not spending too much time on the game, let's be honest here, the ZZZ events can be a little bit time consuming. However, on the flip side, that means that Wuthering Waves' events are very good for me. But you can also say that, well, the Wuwa events are really fucking short, they're a little bit shallow, and they don't have as much engaging factors to them, but you do have a quicker time to rewards. I can see how that's a downside too, potentially. So from the amount of effort that's being put into them, the overall quality, like the work budget that all of these events have to design, I do feel like ZZZ's does have the most overall effort put into them, but hey, it is a little bit too deep for some people's liking. So this is a little bit more subjective, in my opinion. Most free-to-play friendly, Wuthering Waves. I mean, that just goes hand in hand with the gacha section. If Wuthering Waves has the most player-friendly gacha system, it's also going to be the most free-to-play friendly right off the rip, because you do get an exceptional amount of resources in this game, a lot of free stuff, and leveling characters is a lot easier. The weapon banner is guaranteed, so this is like, I do believe that this is the game where free-to-play players are easily pulling the most 5-star limited weapons, and it's something that people really find frustrating about ZZZ, about HSR, about Genshin Impact, because guess what, guys? If you're a free-to-play player in those 3 games and you lose the weapon banner, you might as well reroll, buddy. You might as well reroll, buddy. Go fuck yourself. Because there is nothing more defeating than losing the light cone or the W engine or the Genshin weapon banner and just getting something that's fucking useless, and just getting something actually fucking useless. Best marketing, Genshin Impact. I mean, yeah, they spend so much money on it, it's ridiculous. I hope it's good. They spend so much fucking money on it, it's ridiculous. Yeah, I hope it's good. Best main character, Zenless Zone Zero. I actually think that's, I think that's pretty fair, actually. I think that's pretty fair. If you guys have actually played ZZZ, the main characters are quite entertaining. Rover is, I think, a bit of a self-insert. They kind of are like a Giga self-insert, while Bell and Wise are like legitimately funny. They're legitimately entertaining, and it's not like they always add. They add to the story. They have actual personalities. Characters interact with them in unique ways, and they really shape the interactions. The Honkai Star Rail MC is just like stupid. Like, the Honkai Star Rail MC has an actual mental illness, and they've become like a literal joke. They become a literal joke in the story. And the Genshin MC is just like some weird amalgamation of like a self-insert while also being their own character, and they do nothing right. The best sidekick, Fairy is kind of annoying in ZZZ. Abby is actually good. Abby's actually good. And if you don't like Abby, in my opinion, you just have Paimon like PTSD, post-Paimon traumatic stress disorder. Abby's actually good. Their voice isn't annoying. They actually do cool stuff in combat, and they get it done. They're just like good overall, and they do relevant things in the story. They literally will like shut up and say, "I'm busy, don't bother me," when the moment isn't right for them to interject, and they don't feel forced at all. Best Goon material? Okay, this is pretty self-explanatory. Most generous? Pretty much easily Wuthering Waves. The amount of materials, skill materials, all of the stuff that we've gotten is ridiculous. It is actually ridiculous. Leveling characters at this point has become so absurdly easy with all of the events that they put into the game. And this is the thing, guys. The events don't take any time at all. The most generous events in Wuwa, they take no time at all. And so it's like any player, regardless of where they're coming from, can like immediately gain the benefits. And you can say, oh, ZZZ gives you the same amount of stuff. Well, guess what? It's like locked behind like 5 hours of events to get the same amount of stuff that you'd get in Wuwa, and it would take you 20 minutes. It would take you 20 minutes to get it in Wuwa, and it takes you 5 hours to get in ZZZ, so one's just gonna feel more generous than the other. Best quality of life, easily Wuthering Waves. There's just so much stuff coming out. There's something that comes out every single patch, and there's always like some crazy QOL that makes the game so much better. ZZZ's quality of life is removing ZZZ's quality of death. I've said it before. ZZZ's QOL is removing the features that are killing the game. It's removing the quality of death. And I don't think that really counts. They're just actively removing the features that are killing the game. So I wouldn't call that quality of life. And let's not even talk about Honkai Star Rail and Genshin. They're not even close. Best cutscenes, Zenless Zone Zero. I don't know about this one. I think it could be Wuwa 2 quite easily. ZZZ does have the most cutscenes, and so if we're determining best by like simple quantity, it is also fair to say that ZZZ 1.5 didn't really have that many either. It is fair to say that ZZZ 1.5 didn't have that many cutscenes. And while the cutscenes that they do have are good, I do think like this is like, I've said it a bunch of times, it's either Wuthering Waves or ZZZ at the top here. And whoever is in second is a really close second. This is one of those rankings, and I've done it a couple of times in this list already. It's one or the other, and then the second is really close behind. So I'll leave it at that for that one. Genshin Impact and HSR, though, can go fuck themselves. Especially HSR and 3.0 with its 5-second cutscenes. Ooh. Black Swan presses her forehead to March 7th's forehead. They can't, they're too fucking lazy to animate that. Go fuck yourself. Most predatory. Genshin Impact. I think that what Techie used to describe this is probably like the double banner system. The double banner system that they use for Solali and Mavuika. That's probably what's driving this whole most predatory thing. And from that perspective, I can agree. However, and the weapon banner is awful. However, HSR is literally unplayable unless you pull the new limited characters. So I would say it's actually Genshin and HSR sharing the top spot, but for wildly different reasons. Genshin feels like it has better balance, but the banner system is just ass. Honkai Star Rail has the worst balance ever, but the banner system isn't as ass. So it's like whichever one is worse, it's like the opposite of this. Whichever one is worse, the other one is really close behind. Best cast, Zenless Zone Zero. Yeah. I'm gonna be honest, after playing the ZZZ 1.4 quest, they had like their whole like Avengers moment team up at the end of that quest where they clearly sort of like went from faction to faction. That was kind of cool. ZZZ's like 1.4 Avengers level team up at the end of the 1.4 quest was pretty cool. And I think it's fair to say that other games haven't really done that. While Wuwa might be building up stuff with like Black Shores and then maybe like Rinasita, there feels like there's a lot of neglect for certain characters. Guys, Danjin and Calcharo haven't even shown up in a quest yet. So let's be honest here, right? There are some ignored members of the roster there. Genshin, there's too many characters for them to even give a shit about at this point. There's too many characters in Genshin. They've added way too much shit. And I think ZZZ's method, right, of having more, you know, like upgrades to characters and not releasing like a metric fuck ton of them does help them keep the story a little bit more condensed. And HSR did decide to do a little bit about it with Dan Hung Il, but then they just proceeded to delete Dan Hung Il from the game because he hasn't shown up fucking since. The only time he showed up, it was in an alternate reality, dream reality that never even happened. So yeah, I don't really know what they're doing in that game. Most underrated, Wuthering Waves. I mean, yeah, right? I think ZZZ could take the second spot here quite easily. People are, I guess, surprised that 2.0 is that good. I'm gonna be honest, when people say that 2.0 feels like an entirely different game, I'm like, it kind of doesn't. The game has been this good the entire time, and they've added a couple of new features to exploration. That's kind of what 2.0 feels like to me. I feel like the game has been this good the entire time, and there's just been a couple of like nice things added to exploration. Saying that flying suddenly turns it into an entirely new game is like, I do think it's a bit of an exaggeration. It's gotten better 1000%, but it's not like it increased by like 10 million. It's not like it increased by 10 million. The baseline game was very good. And that's what I mean by underrated. Because if you're calling 2.0 a brand new game, that just means that your perception of everything below that was very underrated. That's like literally the proof. The proof is people saying that it feels like a brand new game. And I think it's evident here, right? If you're saying it feels like a brand new game, that's the fucking proof. Sound design, Wuthering Waves. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. There's something about, you could say ZZZ is a close second. There's something about just like the ZZZ combat noises. Maybe it's like the amount that you hear them. Wuwa has enough like differentiation and space between like the big moves. Imagine if you heard Jian's dragon, right? His Qinglong for 30 seconds. in a row. All you heard was his Qinglong for 30 seconds. Like, it would get tiring after a while. That's what ZZZ's combat sort of feels like, where everything has such a low cooldown, everything happens too frequently, so that like your big moves, you just hear them over and over and over and over and over again. And then you have the parries in ZZZ, where sometimes you just hear clank, 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 clank. And if you hear it once every 10 seconds, it would be fine. But the fact that you can hear it, if you're playing optimally, you can hear it like 20 times in a 30-second time frame, it can sometimes get a little bit jarring or repetitive. And Wuwa's parry sound is a lot less intrusive. And so when you do have the moments in Wuwa's combat where the parries are happening super frequently, it doesn't feel like as weird when you're hearing them a bunch of in a row. And so I think from that perspective, I do see where Wuwa wins here. Best skins. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. Jinsei's skin clears every single thing Genshin has ever produced. And it also clears the lack of any effects that we fucking see in ZZZ. And fucking Honkai Star Rail just has March's skin for the character that nobody plays. Okay, sure. Yeah, Jinsei's skin clears all of them by herself. Best gear system. Okay, Techie. Just because you plus 25 banged 40 echoes in a row, you got nothing good. Doesn't mean diss drives are good. However, I can see the perspective where he's coming from, where ZZZ gives you a lot of different ways to get gear. ZZZ lets you target and force craft certain disk drive sets in certain slots. And so you could say that that alone brings it up to the top. But in my opinion, the infinite farming from Wuthering Waves and the level of consistency that you can get from like the tacit field drops, it doesn't feel like you're ever lacking in gear. In ZZZ, sure, you don't have like the whole issue with like the spread. You don't have an issue of low trash rolls in ZZZ, but guess what, guys? You still have the issue of trying to hit the same substat like 5 or 6 times. You do have the issue of trying to hit the same fucking substat 5 or 6 times, and that's a little rough. And you do obviously have the situation, right, in ZZZ, where you have nothing to actually ever upgrade, where you can go ahead and you can make as many disk drives as you want, and you can just have stuff sitting in your inventory that will never get used ever. In Wuwa, you always have something to upgrade. You always have something to progress. I think Wuwa is better. I still think it's a lot faster to gear. Best mobile experience, Honkai Star Rail. Yeah, because you press one fucking button and you can play the game. So I agree. HSR does have the best mobile experience because it's a one button game once you get Super Break. Yes, sir. Best boss fights presentation, Honkai Star Rail. Yeah, the Sunday boss fight is still the best, where they have like the special moves. It like goes in. The framing of HSR's bosses is actually quite nice. The framing of HSR's bosses as they get in are quite nice. ZZZ and Wuwa and Genshin, on the other hand, it's like you get like a cutscene and then, you know, no real special mechanics. Then you just go fight the boss. Yeah, I can see where these coming from over here. Scaramouche boss is also not. No, Scaramouche boss is fucking terrible. Ooh, you have your little piss gun, your little pea shooter. Your little pea shooter Nahida slave. Just like shooting stuff at the side. Ooh, and then you shoot your little late. No, that's not fun. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes the Scaramouche boss. Best boss fight gameplay, Wuthering Waves. There's one awful boss in Wuwa. That is Jue, but you don't really have to fight Jue anymore after you're done grinding for your Jinsei. And then the holograms in general, all the different movesets, the fact that you repeatedly face the new bosses. Yeah, I do think it's just the best. ZZZ's bosses are like, let's be honest here. You just do the same dodging or parrying. You just kind of do like the same like dodging or parrying, and it's like, okay, the animation was slightly different. And it doesn't really feel like it's... Every attack in ZZZ is like fucking fast. Every attack feels like it's like a Twitch dodge or like a Twitch parry. And you're kind of just like waiting until you see like the red or the yellow light. And in the modes where it's turned off, it's like, okay, well now you're hoping that you memorized when the red or the yellow light typically happens. And it's just, I don't know why, but every boss in ZZZ kind of feels the same. Am I wrong about that? Almost every boss feels the same. I don't think I've played any differently against any ZZZ boss before. Ever. I kind of just go in, I stack up anomalies, and then I disorder, and then I just do it again. Or I go in, I stack up the daze bar, I break them, and then I do the chain rotation, and then I do it again. Most power creep, Honkai Star Rail, 1,000,000%. 1 1,000,000% Honkai Star Rail. Imagine that so many characters are unplayable at this point in the game. Just imagine that. It's insane. The Herda being tier 0 in every single game mode imaginable just because she's the new character. Remember how I was talking about in the call with Pokey how there's like a duo power creep where instead of power creep being isolated to one character, the power creep is isolated to having two characters, where just by themselves the character is useless, but when you pair them with another character, suddenly that duo is the most powerful in the game. It was the Fei Zhao Robin, and now it's going to be the Aglaia and Sunday. So now you actually need both characters for you to do anything. And that's just even worse power creep. That's even worse because you need two characters to activate the power creep and actually make use of it, while having only one of them, useless. Sorry, you need 3 for Aglaia, my bad. You actually need the 3 characters for Aglaia. My bad. Not just 2. It's actually, it's the Triforce. Least power creep. Wuthering Waves. Yeah, absolutely, right? I go take Gian and I poop on the content. I take Gian and I poop on the content. 1,000,000%. I'll still shit on it today. I'll take the middle tower. We still have to do that. I'll go shit on it with Gian. Easy. No problem. Best UI. Genshin Impact. Yeah, ZZZ's gives me AIDS. I'm not gonna lie. ZZZ's UI actually gives me like a mental problem. I get lost in the menu so often. It's actually terrible. I think Genshin has the crispest and easiest thing to see. It's the easiest on the eyes. And for Wuthering Waves, there are a couple of places like the Echo menu, the backpack, a couple of places just in like Echo leveling itself that gets a little bit annoying. I do think tuners and leveling should just be on the same page. There are a couple of extra clicks you need to do in Wuwa to get to do what you want to do. But ZZZ, oh fuck me. You have to click way too much in ZZZ. In ZZZ, it's like you have to button mash in the game for the combat. In ZZZ, you also have to button mash in the UI to get to where you want to go. The number of fucking clicks you need to do to actually do what you want to do in that game is absurd. I'm going to be honest. Best companion quests. Yeah, ZZZ's quests are dog shit because apparently there are still TVs in the agent stories. So that just automatically makes them like a easy like 4 out of 10 for me. I'm never going to do an agent story if they have TVs in them. And so Wuwa, I mean, the companion quests have always been good. There's never been a bad story quest in Wuthering Waves. I don't think so. I don't think anyone has said a single one has been bad. They've all actually been quite good. They're focused on the character. They dive into their lore. They're not obscenely long. Best world quests, Wuthering Waves. Yeah, no, they're pretty good. I think my favorite part about the Wuwa world quests is that obviously you can skip them and you can skip the annoying parts of the dialogue if you don't like them. And they feel very seamlessly woven into the world. 1,000,000% woven into the world. And guess what, guys? World quests that aren't skippable, where it's just like a mountain of fucking dialogue about shit you honestly don't really fucking care about, that's terrible. It's not good. It's just not good. Who cares? Because you don't. You just want to see all the cool shit happen, get the rewards, get out. And this is the thing. In Genshin, the world quests are bad. They're actually bad. They put you to sleep. They're not very fun. They give you little tidbits of lore that you frankly don't really give a shit about. You're just trying to get the primo gems. They don't make it interesting. Wuwa has you doing all your world quests and they're super interactive. You're directly engaging with like all of these different areas of the world and you're like collecting things. You don't have a mountain of fucking dialogue. You don't even need to skip the Wuwa world quests because there's not really that much dialogue in the first place. You get mini cutscenes in game. You have like the stuff with all the knights in 2.0. Inferno Rider, you're literally throwing spears at the guy. You're fucking throwing spears at Inferno Rider and then you're testing out the spears by like throwing them at target dummies. They're interactive. Genshin is just like everything's being fucking told to you. You move to the next spot, more shit's told to you. Oh, and don't even talk about Honkai Star Rail's world quests. Just go fuck yourself. Penacony, getting your fucking Harmony Trailblazer to E6, I'd rather die. I quit the game instead of getting Harmony Trailblazer to E6. I simply quit the game. It was that unplayable. Best main story quest, Genshin Impact. I think that's for the same exact reason that we listed above. Other games just need more time to cook, and HSR has no fucking clue what they're doing. Most beginner friendly, Zenless Zone Zero. Yeah, you can just button mash and win. Highest skill ceiling, Wuthering Waves. Easily fair. I don't think anything even comes close to like an optimally played quick swap team. Most immersive, Wuthering Waves. Yeah, there's a reason why there are people that hate open world gacha games, and they've 100% at 2.0. Best optimized, Honkai Star Rail. Yeah, because you don't have to fucking do anything in the game. You just press the auto button, and then you can turn the screen off, and the game will play itself, so... yeah. Overall, I do think that there's a good basis of truth over here on this entire tier list. I do think that there's a lot that he struck gold on when it came to his evaluations. But I do think that, especially when it came to kind of like those areas of competition that I was talking about, right? With Wuwa and ZZZ, it's either one or the other, and the other one close behind. And when we're talking about something where it's objectively bad, like PowerCreep or most Predatory, it's Genshin or HSR, with the other one close behind. So overall, I think it's a pretty good list. Of course, Mr. Jokey's gonna disagree, but hey, you know, HSR's biggest defender, #1 fan, he's just doing his job at this point. But I think it's a fair take. I think it's a fair shake, and I'm excited to see what you all think. Peace out. Guys, I didn't sing that badly, okay? 喜泪星海之方，万顺雷听起故乡. Unfollowing for that? Guys,